The Lavender Witch Quest of the Supreme. In the heart of the Dragon Temple, where time itself seemed to pause, Kelvin stood as a being of pure lavender light. Her ethereal form shimmered beside the crone, a woman so ancient her skin was a roadmap of forgotten histories. This was Hecate, and before them stood the first challenge, a massive brown door carved with dragons that writhed in the silent wood. Hecate placed a gnarled hand upon the door. With a groan that echoed through the temple, it swung inward, not into another chamber, but into a world of impossible green. A wall of humid air, thick with the scent of damp earth and unknown blossoms, washed over them. "The first gate awaits," the crone rasped, her voice like grinding stones. They stepped through and found themselves in a clearing dominated by a thunderous waterfall. The air was alive with its roar and cool with its spray. Before the cascade stood two stone sentinels, draped in moss and history, a noble centaur and a hulking troll. As the mist kissed Kelvin's luminous form, her light began to coalesce, drawing inward. The transformation settled, and where light had been, flesh and fabric now stood. Kelvin was a witch again, with hair like spun gold, a gown, the color of twilight lavender, a pointed hat, and elegant heels. A voice, ancient and resonant, echoed from the stone duo. "The path is chosen by the touch. One trial to prove your worth." A strange kinship drew her to the centaur, a silent understanding of pride and sorrow. She stepped forward, her heels sinking slightly into the soft earth, and laid her hand upon the statue's cold stone chest. A white light, brighter than any dawn, erupted from the point of contact, swallowing her whole. The light receded, leaving her in the aethel jungle. But this was no peaceful forest. The air was hostile, thick with rage. The ground was choked with blight thistle, a sentient corruption of thorny vines that writhed like serpents. Through the twisted trees, she saw the centaurs. They were not merely sick. They were consumed by a violent madness, their eyes glowing with a malevolent green light as they thrashed against the trees, against each other. Her quest was to find the source of the corruption and purge it. The legend spoke of moon-petal lilies, a flower that bloomed only in the jungle's deepest heart. As she ventured further, a figure blocked her path. It was the centaur chieftain, larger than the others, his powerful form almost entirely encased in the pulsating blight thistle. He held a gnarled spear, and his glowing eyes fixed on her, not as a savior, but as an invader. He charged, his roar a sound of pure agony. Kelvin knew force would only feed the madness. She dodged his frenzied attacks, the wind from his spear whistling past her ear. Instead of fire or lightning, she summoned her own essence, projecting a wave of calming lavender energy. It was a battle of wills, her serenity against his torment, a soft light against a raging, thorny darkness. Her magic touched the sliver of the true warrior buried beneath the blight. For a single heartbeat, the green in the chieftain's eyes flickered. "The heart," he rasped, his voice tearing from his throat. "The well, it poisons us all." The rage overwhelmed him again, but the effort was too much. He crashed to the ground, unconscious. Kelvin now knew the truth. The ancient stone well, the jungle's heart, was the source of the curse. She found the well in a corrupted clearing. It was a festering wound in the earth. The water was a black, bubbling ichor, and the blight thistle grew thickest here, a cancerous heart pulsing with malice. She gathered the nearby moon-petal lilies and, with focused grace, wove them with braids of her own lavender magic into a sacred circlet. But she knew a simple offering would not be enough to heal this profound poison. The Stamen of Serenity ritual required more than words. It demanded a sacrifice. To fight a poison so absolute, she had to offer a purity just as potent. Wincing, Kelvin pricked her finger on a thorn of the blight thistle. She held her hand over the well and let a single shimmering drop of her own lavender-infused blood fall into the black water. The instant it touched the surface, the well screamed. The well erupted, not with a gentle mist, but with a violent cleansing geyser, of pure lavender light. The explosion tore through the clearing, vaporizing the blight thistle and blasting the corruption from the jungle. A collective cry of release echoed through the trees as the centaurs collapsed, their madness purged. Back at the waterfall, the stone centaur began to glow with a fierce, brilliant light. Before her, Hecate appeared, but not as the crone alone. She stood in her triple aspect, the maiden, the mother, and the crone, a trinity of divine power. The first trial is complete, their voices chimed in, perfect, layered harmony. You have brought peace where there was turmoil. Well done. One more to go, my child. Hecate, in her triple form, gestured towards the stone troll. The earth itself is trapped in a nightmare. A titan's heart is afflicted by a crystalline plague. Bring it peace. Kelvin nodded, her resolve hardening. She approached the hulking statue and placed her hand on its stony brow. The world dissolved again into blinding white light. She found herself on a high, desolate pass in the spine of the World Mountains. The air was thin and sharp. The ground trembled violently with a deep, rhythmic groaning that vibrated through the soles of her heels. Following the tremor, she came to a vast cliff face and saw him, a troll of impossible scale, a being of living mountain, tormented in his sleep. Pulsing, crystalline shards like dark amethysts grew from his rocky skin, emanating a palpable aura of despair. Kelvin realized her task was not to soothe a dream, but to perform surgery on a god. She had to climb the living mountain and destroy the 3 largest heart shards without waking the titan. She began her ascent, and as she neared the first shard on his shoulder, a phantom voice slithered into her mind, whispering of her deepest fears, showing her visions of failure. You cannot heal what is broken, the voices hissed. Kelvin centered herself, pushing back with her own lavender light. I am not here to fix what is broken, she whispered, but to remove what does not belong. She reached the first heart shard and focused her magic into a single, pure, resonant frequency. The crystal screamed and shattered into dust. The troll shuddered violently, and a wave of psychic feedback threw Kelvin from her feet. An avalanche of rock and scree cascaded down the slope. She threw up a magical shield just in time, the stones crashing against it. Her next target was near the titan's heart, an area guarded by smaller shards that now pulsed defensively, firing sharp slivers of solidified nightmare at her. She moved with a dancer's grace, deflecting the crystalline projectiles with sweeps of her hand, while leaping across chasms that opened and closed with the troll's pained breaths. The air grew thick with dread, but Kelvin's focus was absolute. She reached the second heart shard, a twisted growth over the troll's heart. As she prepared the resonant spell again, the rock around her began to fold inwards, the troll's dream trying to crush the intrusion. Be gone, a voice boomed in her mind, and in the rock itself. Kelvin pushed back with raw power, her lavender aura forcing the rock apart as she shattered the second shard. The backlash was immense, nearly knocking her unconscious. Only one remained, the master shard on his brow. As she approached, the world warped. A vortex of shadow and despair swirled around the crystal, pulling her in. She was no longer on the mountain, but inside the core of the nightmare, a shattered plane under a bleeding sky, facing the entity behind the corruption. It was a being of crystallized despair, vaguely humanoid, but made of shifting facets of shadow. He chose this, it hissed, its voice the grinding of stone. He chose oblivion over loneliness. You offer him nothing but a return to an empty existence. You are wrong, Kelvin said, her voice calm but ringing with power. You offer oblivion, but I offer peace. She didn't attack. Instead, she unleashed her light, not as a weapon, but as an offering. She flooded the nightmare with visions of the world the troll's long slumber protected, the deer drinking from a stream on his foot, the eagles nesting on his peak, the quiet turning of seasons he was a part of. The entity of despair could not exist in a dream filled with such connection. It shrieked and dissolved. Kelvin found herself back on the troll's brow, her hand on the now inert heart shard. With a final touch, she shattered it. The troll's great sigh was a gentle breeze that swept through the mountains. The tremors ceased. She was back at the waterfall. The stone centaur and the stone troll now both glowed, one with a soft white light, the other with a deep, earthen radiance. Hecate stood before her in her triple aspect. "You have healed the land and cleansed the mind," their voices chimed. "You have shown that the greatest power is not in domination, but in restoration. The quest of the Supreme is complete, my child."